So, have you ever felt like all the truly great business ideas are already taken, that you're just a little too late to the party? Well, today, we're going to completely flip that idea on its head. We're going to dive into how you can actually train your brain to think differently, to move past the obvious, and start generating business ideas that are genuinely brilliant and, most importantly, get you noticed. And our launchpad for this whole thing is a book by Bob Sager called 101 Freaking Brilliant Business Ideas. But here's the thing. We're not just going to list off a bunch of cool ideas. Nope. We're going to use this book to get to the real gold, the methods behind the magic, so you can learn how to create your own brilliant ideas. And this quote from the book, it just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? In a world that is just screaming for our attention, blending in is basically the same as being invisible. The real challenge today isn't just about being a little bit better. It's about being fundamentally different. So let's talk about that. Why does this whole idea of being remarkable actually matter? I mean, it's not just some trendy buzzword. In the economy we're all living in, it's pretty much a requirement for survival. You know, Sager calls it the attention span economy. And that makes perfect sense. People have a million options for everything, and our brains are wired to tune out anything that feels familiar or boring. The old playbook of just shouting louder or working harder, it just doesn't work anymore. But here's the really good news. Thinking innovatively, that's a skill. And just like any other skill, you can learn it, you can practice it, and you can get really, really good at it. Okay, so theory is great, but let's get into the fun stuff. To really see what this kind of thinking looks like out in the wild, we're going to pull a few creative examples right out of the book. And these aren't just clever tricks, they're whole new ways of looking at a problem. Okay, check this one out. The scavenger hunt. This completely changes a boring old retail store from a place you just buy stuff into a destination, an event. It creates this awesome energy, a sense of urgency, and a really memorable experience that not only gets people talking, but, actually gets them to walk through the door, especially on a slow Tuesday. Or what about this? Instead of sending another boring email that's just going to get deleted, you mail a birthday card to your client's office copier. I mean, how weird is that? It's so quirky and unexpected that it's absolutely unforgettable. It shows this level of creativity and humor that instantly makes you stand out from literally everyone else. And this idea, a full house, this is a perfect example of gamification. It turns the simple act of buying something into a fun game of collecting and winning. Now, instead of just making a purchase, your customers are on this little quest to build the best poker hand. And believe me, that keeps them coming back in a way a boring old punch card never ever could. Okay, so these ideas are all pretty brilliant, right? But looking at other people's clever ideas is one thing. The real goal here is for you to be able to generate them yourself. So that's the big question. How do we get our brains to stop just copying what's already out there and start inventing what comes next? Well, the book lays out some really practical methods to fire up your creativity. Think of them like exercises for your imagination. We're going to look at two of the most powerful ones right now. First up is something called combinatory play. Now, this isn't some new agey trick. This is a technique that absolute legends like Einstein and Da Vinci used. And the idea behind it is actually super simple. You take two things that have absolutely nothing to do with each other, you smash them together, and you see what new ideas pop out. For example, what happens when you combine the word dog with the word kitchen? All of a sudden, your brain just starts firing off new concepts. A gourmet bakery just for dogs, a line of designer feeding stations that match your cabinets, a cafe where people can actually eat with their dogs. See, that collision, that's where innovation is born. The big takeaway here is that innovation isn't always about creating something from nothing. A lot of the time, it's about creatively combining what's already there. All right, the second method is all about proposing a ridiculous notion. This is where you challenge the most basic, fundamental assumption of an entire industry. You ask a what-if question that on the surface sounds completely absurd, like this one, which probably sounded totally insane not too long ago. Now, what's so powerful about this is seeing how these seemingly impossible questions led directly to some of the most disruptive companies on the entire planet. Every single one of these billion-dollar giants started out as a totally ridiculous idea that turned an industry's core belief completely upside down. So you see, the real magic isn't finding one specific idea in a book. It's realizing that you can systematically train yourself to see the world in a new way, to generate these kinds of ideas whenever you want. So how do you actually start? Well, it really just boils down to 3 simple steps. First, you have to accept that being ordinary just isn't an option anymore. Second, you have to actively practice these thinking methods, like combinatory play. Make it a habit. And third, and this is a big one, write everything down, every single idea. The book is really clear that most of your ideas are gonna be bad, but you have to go through the bad ones to get to the brilliant ones. So I'm gonna leave you with this challenge, inspired by another technique in the book. Instead of trying so hard to come up with a good idea, try to come up with a really bad one, a ridiculous one. What's an assumption in your industry that is so fundamental that nobody ever questions it? Because as we've just seen, sometimes the most ridiculous questions end up having the most brilliant answers.